The man with the NASA t-shirt, man. Karl, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Have you been up with NASA also? You've been into so many things. Is there something cooking up with NASA as well now?
Well, when it was the first job I ever wanted as a kid to be an astronaut, so I guess for the t-shirt will have to do for now.
Life has come indeed full circle for you, right? Like thinking about let's get started with your childhood, man. You are the youngest ever. I think what's the exact, like the presenter, the business owner at age 15 in the UK. You're felicitated for some awards as well. Like, what's been up? Didn't you enjoy playing football in childhood? Were you all about business?
Um, well, I think I was very boring in a lot of senses that, I always much preferred kind of, working on and thinking about various different business things at a young age, much preferred that to a lot of other things, that most kids get up to. And at the time, that was had its pros, had its cons, but I think all in all, I'm very glad that I did it because it's meant that straight out of university, I could start my own business and have that, be my full-time gig directly, from graduating. So it's put me in a really good position, and it is my hobby, and it has been for a very long time. So I'm very pleased to be doing what I am.
Carl, let's talk about this in general. I think this is a very good discussion to have, and with someone like you who's actually done this experience and who's been in this game for like quite some time now. I think you are an inspiration in some sorts to so many people who want to get started with their freelancing journey, or if they wanted to get started with entrepreneurship. So just tell me this, like I'll let me present a case study for you, and you tell me wherein how would you help this person out. So let's say a person gets into college, right? They're doing some degree and they always have this idea of entrepreneurship inside of them, and they're super passionate, super driven, but they just can't for the life of themselves figure out the next actionable step that I can take. Everyone is telling me, read 7 books on business, learn finance, learn this, learn that. I'm learning all of this, listen to so many podcasts and everything, but what action can I take? What translates into physical reality that moves me one step closer to financial freedom, that moves me one step closer to having something of my own? You are a person who's done it multiple times, so where does someone actually start?
Mm. It's a very good question. I think oftentimes with anything in life, um, what can be the biggest kind of obstacle is just figuring out where to actually start. But I think that, the best way to actually get started is to, well, as Walt Disney said, the best way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, which I think there's a lot of, it's a very good quote. Um, but ultimately, I think it comes to rethinking like kind of how you think about the learning process. So for me personally, I learn best by doing. And I think that that is true for a lot more people than who necessarily realize that that's the right approach for them. And I think that when you want to start a business, that is possibly the only way. Because you have to kind of figure it out. Yes, you can and should listen to people who have done it before. You can and should speak with them directly, read books, find out as much as you can. But ultimately, the best way to actually get started is to start, to actually do something. So I think the best thing, well, the first thing you should figure out is, what are you looking to achieve? Are you looking to make a lot of money? Are you looking to solve a particular problem that you're passionate about? Are you looking to build a big business, that eventually has a team of hundreds or maybe thousands of people, but you are, kind of a smaller part of it at that point? Or are you looking to build a small business where you own all of the shares, and just kind of have that financial freedom? Do you want to work, a lot? Do you want to build up a passive income so you can, in the near future, maybe work only a few hours every week? I think these are all questions that are really important to ask yourself and figure out at the beginning. And of course, these things can change as you go along, because, maybe you go the passive income route and then you start getting bored. Then you want to do something that's a
Yeah.
bit more hands-on. So it's absolutely fine for it to change. but you know, figure out what it is at any given time, and then work towards that. But I think the best way to actually start a business is to work on some kind of a problem that you know a lot about and are passionate about solving. So, you know, it could start with perhaps a group of people. So in my case, it was freelancers. You know, I was a freelancer myself for many years. I know the freelancing space inside out. You know, I think that freelancing is a fantastic way of working that more and more people are getting into. So I'm passionate about making it sort of easier for everyone involved. And that's why Revolancer, you know, is a very kind of good and a natural fit for me. But that's going to be a different thing probably for everyone else. So figure out, you know, what you're passionate about, and then just get started. You know, when I started, I didn't know how to hire people, how to, you know, manage people, how to fundraise, how to do all of these different things. I had no idea, but I figured it out when I needed to, you know, like, for example, we needed to raise funding. Okay. So I spoke to people who've raised funding before and I learned from them. Then I started fundraising myself and I learned from that experience, and then kind of built that up. So, you know, that's I think the best approach is to just get started and learn as you go.
Yeah, that's really solid advice, Carl. Let me tell. Let's discuss about, you know, the things that are mostly not talked about when it comes to starting a business, or when it comes to, you know, doing freelancing or something outside of the ordinary. So I think everyone shows the kind of glamorous side that, you know, once you've made this big and once you've had all the millions, you've had the fundraising, you've had the hundreds of thousands of dollars in your banks and everything. But as a person who's already done it multiple times, who's had this experience, do you still feel the imposter syndrome when you're doing something, you know, maybe as difficult or maybe as unorthodox as uh, entrepreneurship? Or do you still feel that unsure anxiety feeling, you know, even after having this much experience? Like, if I were to place bets on someone starting out right now and on Carl, I would probably, you know, bet that you, since you have more experience, that you are more likely to be good at entrepreneurship. But do you still feel anxiety? Do you still feel, you know, a little bit out of place even after all this experience of entrepreneurship?
I absolutely do, and I think it's a good sign. You know, imposter syndrome is a sign that you are kind of pushing the you know, the pushing what you're capable of doing, and really doing something that's worth doing and is a challenge. You know, because if you don't have imposter syndrome, then you know, there's a good chance that you are working on something, or sort of doing something that isn't particularly challenging, where you feel very comfortable in that. You know, yes, I have started a few businesses, you know, over the past 10 years or so. I've had some wins. I've had many losses. But ultimately, you know, I don't know everything. I will never know everything. Nobody will ever know everything. All we can do is kind of, you know, keep learning and keep challenging and pushing ourselves. And I think imposter syndrome is kind of, it's a natural part of that, essentially. And I think it's an important part of that. It's something, you know, that people have to learn how to deal with. But I think the best approach is to kind of just realize that the fact you're feeling it is good. It means that you are pushing the mold, you know, and just kind of to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Maybe I didn't look at it like this, you know, that this could also be a positive, you know, a kind of an indicator which tells you that, you know, you're kind of maybe on the right path because everything is not going according to you. That's sometimes a good sign. Maybe you're, you know, you're on the path less traveled. There's a poem also, I guess. So, Carl, do you feel that you might have evaded all of this and just gotten into a really stable corporate job and just had that, you know, stable life and have a salary which comes in at the end of every month? Does that still attract you? Does that seem like a viable option for you ever, or have you just, you know, kind of given up on that?
It's never attracted me. It's never been something I wanted to do. You know, I think I would make a terrible employee. I think I would be miserable. And it was actually kind of in figuring that out that I realized, back when I was around 13 or so, that, you know, this is what I wanted to do and what I've been working towards since. And actually, when I was in school, when I was about 16 years old, I think, I did 2 weeks of work experience, and that just really cemented that in my mind, because I always kind of intuitively knew, but then I had proof that this, that path just wasn't for me. But it comes back to what I said earlier. That doesn't mean that that path is wrong. It just means that I took the time to learn, like understand myself, and that I'm being true to myself in what I'm doing. There are many people for whom entrepreneurship would be completely the wrong choice, and a corporate job would be much better. And that's absolutely what they should do then. But I think it just comes down to knowing and understanding yourself, being honest with yourself about what you want, not necessarily thinking about it in terms of like these glamorous sort of perceptions of entrepreneurship, maybe, which are, for the most degree, completely false. And and just, if this is really what you want to do, then absolutely do it. But equally, if it's something else you really want to do, then do that. The only mistake you can make is not being true to yourself.
And Karl, what's your take on kind of patience in this whole game? Like, I think freelancing, whatever freelancers I've talked to and whatever experience I kind of have with the people who do this gig, is that mostly getting your first client is hard, and getting your second is even harder. Sometimes it kind of goes like that. It's you can't ever predict. Maybe you land a very good client and some months are just great, and maybe you can go for a phase that you don't even get a single sell, you don't get clients regularly, and that kind of takes a toll on you. So as a freelancer, as a person who's worked with multiple freelancers, what do you think patience is kind of, because it's a double-edged sword if you look at it in this regard, that being too patient and not changing things around is also kind of could backfire for you. Like, you're consistently patient and you're 3 years you're doing the same thing, it's not working out, so there needs to be something that needs to be changed, right? But also, like, having that in back of your mind with changing things too quickly, pivoting too quickly before it actually turns out. So what's your take on the patience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult balance, and I think that this particular issue is very similar for entrepreneurs and freelancers, who have, in my opinion, a huge amount in common. And it is difficult. It can be very difficult, especially when you're like really invested in the kind of day-to-day of things. And I think it's times like this where I would then advise that you speak to someone else who's doing it, some kind of a mentor, an advisor, somebody who is an experienced freelancer, and just kind of get them to have a look at what's going on, and then advise you. Because the thing is, like, if you are really struggling to find clients, and but you're working very hard towards that, then there's the question of like, okay, what are you doing? Like, yes, you're working hard, but are you sort of working hard on the wrong thing? And then it's important to figure that out, and to address that. And I think working with a mentor of some kind can often be the easiest way to reach that conclusion.
And have you had that chance of working with mentors, or did you figure it out all on your own?
I absolutely did not figure it out all on my own. I don't think anybody ever has, Yes, and yes, I've had the privilege of working with many fantastic mentors, and I still do. I still continue to, and I've even started mentoring some people myself, which I find very, very rewarding. And and when it comes to advisors and mentors, it doesn't, the point of it isn't that you listen and follow every piece of advice they give you. Like, I have several advisors for Freelancer, and there have been cases where I've called with multiple in a day about a particular thing we were facing, and they were giving completely conflicting advice, and so ultimately the point of speaking with a mentor is to gain that additional perspective on things, to help you kind of think about things in a kind of get a broader view of thought on a particular issue, and to then either decide, oh, okay, maybe I need to change something, and maybe what they're recommending is right, or maybe you think that, no, actually, I think I'm doing it right. I disagree with their approach, and I'm going to do it my way. But then you've been able to think about it from more perspectives, and you can be more kind of sure about the decisions that you're coming to.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because you can't essentially, I think the point we were talking about earlier was, thinking too much about something before you begin and taking that first step. They also call this analysis paralysis. I think this is kind of term that you give once you get too much absorbed into the process, and too much into the strategic part of things. But Carl, I've always wondered this about people. Like, I am a person who's very interested into the way humans think and act. I am very interested in why does someone choose to do this instead of that, and what are their reward mechanisms looking like, what is driving them. Because I feel like most of actions that I take are out of curiosity, and like things that I love doing are a extension of my curiosity. I go and try to find an answer to this question, and in the process I just enjoy that process. Like, this podcast is this conversation that we're having is a byproduct of that only. I'm curious about different life experiences. That's why I have this platform to talk to people. So I'm really curious in terms of what is driving you still. What is something that you feel that I've not yet achieved, and this is something that I'm working towards. What is that deep kind of desire that gets you out of bed on days where you can just chill and you can just lay back?
Well, I think, like, looking at what I'm doing specifically, my goal with Freelancer, as I've always said from the beginning, is to change the freelancing industry for the better and forever. I think there are lots of, the way things have been done for a very long time, there are lots of problems with that. It's becoming more and more of a big problem with the way that we are looking to work remotely nowadays. So with Freelancer, it's very much that. And then like, looking a bit more broadly, for me personally, I mean, a question that I always ask people, because I get asked by people quite a lot, whether they should start a business, whether entrepreneurship is right for them. And the question that I always ask people is, would you rather be stressed or would you rather be bored? And most people would rather be bored. But for me, being bored is the most horrible feeling. I could be like so stressed, right? But as long as I'm not bored, I'm fine.
Okay, this is interesting.
And what I do, I'm never bored. I'm absolutely never bored professionally, with what I do. I'm frequently stressed, but I'm never bored. And I think that's another thing. Like, I want to make a really positive impact on a large scale. I want to do something that's very interesting and challenging. And I get to do all of those things with what I'm doing.
So let's get back to being bored and being stressed. How does that actually translate into this? Because I have a conflicting view on this. I kind of feel that boredom for me, and maybe this could be something that I will try to figure out from your point of view, that being bored for me sometimes is like, it's a path to a new creative pursuit. If I get time to be bored, I feel it's like a kind of a privilege, because the amount of distractions and the things that we're supposed to do are present in our lives. It almost becomes a privilege to maybe get that time to get bored eventually. Like, you would be done with all your tasks, you're now well rested, and now you're getting bored. So sometimes I feel that is something that is lacking in my life as well, because of so many factors. But I feel that boredom kind of inspires creativity as well. Don't you think?
I think it does. I think it absolutely does. But at that point, you are, the creativity there is, you're sort of looking to do something because you're bored. You're looking to, I think that's what it ultimately is. You are trying not to be bored, basically. And then creative things are popping into your mind. So yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely right that oftentimes we're most creative when we're not kind of being overstimulated by lots of different things and really in the moment. But at the same time, I think that's us trying not to be bored.
That is very interesting, right? I think this is a very inception kind of a theory, that whenever we're bored, we're still trying to not get bored when we're trying for something creative. It kind of defeats itself on its own. Yeah, it's this is a very interesting take. So what exactly do you do, Karl? That, like, you told me that you're happy to be stressed than be bored. But what makes you rest? What keeps you healthy? What keeps you emotionally, mentally stable apart all in midst of all of this?
I mean, I think so a big part of it more recently, over the past how long now, a bit more than 6 months, has been actually working from an office. And because for a long time, everybody was working remotely. And that was working fine, and it works absolutely fine for most people. But for me, you know, I had been working remotely for a couple of years at that point.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think the issue is that if we are like in the same place, you know, working, relaxing, eating, sleeping, all of the stuff, it can all get muddled together. So it can be maybe harder to concentrate on work. And when it's time to switch off, it can be much harder to switch off. So what's
Yeah.
really helped me is like going to the office, working at the office, and then coming home and you know, and relaxing and living and doing other things. So just having that kind of physical separation has really helped me with you know, kind of mentally. But equally, I think, like, you know, when it comes to working remotely or from the office, different things work for different people. I think, you know, any kind of extreme in one way or the other is probably not great. So, but yeah, it's a very individual thing. But for me, I found it's really good and very healthy for me to have that disconnect.
Yeah. What this I love asking to people sometimes, and you know, people like, I think certainly people like you, who I feel have not the most same kind of take on life. Like, you know, you would rather be stressed than bored. This is the first time I've heard someone say that. So I want to know, what will be Karl doing 20 years from now? You know, since you said that, you know, there's still stuff that you want to do. What you know, what will I find you doing if I catch up with you in 2043?
It's hard to say, but I know I'll be doing something. Like, you know, if I get into the
Won't you
very,
be in a pool chilling with a couple of margaritas? Won't that be you?
no, no way. I mean, like, you know, if I get into the very lucky position of being able to, you know, retire early and you know, be completely sorted out, I still wouldn't. You know, I would still be working on various different business projects. You know, in 20 years, will I still be working on Revolancer? I don't know. The chances are probably not, but again, I don't know. But there'll be something else I want to work on. You know, there are lots of things that I care about. There are lots of things I'm passionate about. There are probably lots of things that I'm yet to discover that I sort of really care about and I'm passionate about. So it's hard to say what I will be doing, but I definitely will be doing something.
That's amazing, Carl. I love the drive and enthusiasm that you have and the clarity you have. I think this is something that is also I've seen in a while, that, you know, being so clear and being so, like, you know, unwaveringly just, you know, by yourself. You're kind of accepting yourself as you are, and there's no two ways about it. You know what you want to do, and you'll go on and do it. I think that's really cool. What do you think is you know, something that most freelancers kind of miss? You know, what are good, I think there are some good hits that every, you know, successful freelancer has done, but what in your experience has been, like, you know, for sure thing that freelancers do and they fail?
I think just giving up. That's really the main thing. You know, I recently read something very interesting about human evolutionary kind of psychology, which is that one of the, you know, because humans are, you know, if you look at other sort of animals that hunt, right, we are slower and like you're probably less good at it than any one of them. But what made humans successful is the fact that we can be very persistent and we just don't give up. So, you know, being persistent is far more important than being smart, fast, skilled, able, everything else, you know. And like, especially if you're just starting out freelancing or starting out with a business, there's a very good chance that it will go wrong. There's a very good chance that it will fail, and there's a very good chance that it'll be like a long and tedious process until that time comes. You know, and I think that many people, you know, they'll just decide, okay, this is not for me. I tried it, it didn't work out. Done. You know, but the ones who are successful are not the ones who succeed from the start, but the ones who don't quit, who just keep showing up and keep trying. So I think that is the most important thing.
And do you still feel that, freelancing, and maybe we saw a lot of remote work, and we've talked about, the different model of working. But do you think, like, since you're so much into this industry, do you have a take on, what the world is kind of looking at in terms of working remotely, in terms of freelancers, the number of freelancers going up, and, people opting a more individualistic approach to life, like college kids now looking more at freelancing as a viable route than, let's say, corporate job?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, like if we look at some freelancing stats in general, like even today, there are more than 1.5 billion freelancers in the world, and that's about a third of the global workforce, and that's already the case today. And
Wow.
the other thing is that in a recent study, they found that 71% of Gen Z already do or want to go into freelancing instead of a kind of a full-time traditional career, and that is by far the highest percentage of any generation ever, right? And also the American consulting company McKinsey predicts that by 2027 more than half of the US workforce are going to be freelance. So I think that trend is very much very much clear. I think in terms of remote work, it's somewhat difficult to say, especially because there are a lot of companies who own, real estate, or they rent big offices, and they are insisting that people come, and work
Yeah.
in person. So
Yeah.
I think for freelancers in general, remote work is absolutely high and is going to continue being high. For like more traditional jobs, I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's safe to say that the trend is definitely going towards remote work, and definitely going towards freelancing.
Man, you're just such a library of knowledge. Let me just it's amazing to talk to you, the way that you're able to put numbers, in the way that you're so much well known about your industries, that I would love to know that what is one mistake that you did that you want people to not make.
I'd say the biggest mistake I made early on, so this is already a few years ago now, but the biggest mistake I made early on is thinking that I knew everything, and kind of
Hmm.
having a big ego, about things when really I knew nothing. um, and it took a few years. I mean, like fortunately, because I started quite early, this was like while I was a teenager, and I think like being a teenager amplifies that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately, well, there's the Dunning-Kruger effect, which you can see in everything, where essentially, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. So in other words, like the more you actually learn about something, the more you start realizing, hang on, I actually know nothing about this, and you become like almost more insecure about it. But
Yeah.
when you know nothing, you think you know everything, because you don't know what you don't know, right? So I definitely felt prone to that early on. I like to think I don't anymore. I work with lots of very, very talented people, and learn from others, and that's really helped me, and at Revolancer as well. Like I will frequently say to my team, especially when they're just starting out, because I want to like really train this into them, because I don't think a lot of employers do this, is what I'll say to them is, I would rather my ideas get shut down every single time than us kind of doing, taking the wrong approach and doing the
Hmm.
wrong thing. So I would rather be wrong on everything and get proven wrong on absolutely everything than for the company to, take a stupid path because I happen to think that was the right approach and didn't
Yeah.
listen to anyone else. So we have a sort of a culture of people challenging each other, and that's been incredibly useful. It's really, really helped us.
Amazing, man. Carl, you're giving me such profound knowledge on multiple things. And I think you truly kind of did that whole experience, and it's taught you a lot. And I hope that people who listen to this kind of get that same level of insight from this episode as well. Thank you so much, man, for taking the time out. It was lovely talking to you, and I'll be in touch. I'm rooting for Revel Answer and all the team. And, it was great talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for having me.